Okay, see, the official state religion of Denmark is Evangelical Lutheran Church of Denmark, or the Folkekirken. The Danish government even includes a Minister of Ecclesiastical Affairs, and as of January 2020, 74.4% of Danes were members of this state religion.
In the U.S., it was founded on the concept of the separation of church and state, and it's defined in the U.S. Constitution with the First Amendment. Ratified in 1791, it states, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. According to Gallup in 2020, 47% of Americans reported belonging to a church, synagogue, or mosque.
So there you have it. Denmark is a theocracy with a state religion, and the U.S. is a secular, non-religious country.
Good God. Hold on a minute. Obviously, it's a little bit more complicated than all that, and we have to dig into some of the details behind this, because I don't think the numbers and those facts tell the entire story.
All right, well, that's it on paper. Let's get into the details and look at the history, sociology, and the trends of religion in both Denmark and America. So Denmark converted to Christianity over 1,000 years ago, and that was done by King Harald Bluetooth in the town of Jelling. He even set up a monument to commemorate the occasion. But he didn't force everybody to adopt Christianity right away. It actually was something that kind of slowly phased in, while Norse paganism slowly phased out. In the 1500s, Denmark became a Protestant country, and since then, religiosity in Denmark has ebbed and flowed along with most of Northern Europe over the last centuries since then.
Yeah, the U.S. is a little bit more of a hodge-podge. I mean, certainly being a country primarily of immigrants means that there's a lot of different traditions that have come together. I mean, a lot of the major waves of immigration in the U.S. in, say, the pre-Revolutionary War period were a lot of people that were escaping the religious wars of the 16 and 1700s as well. The U.S. also has a number of homegrown religious movements. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Mormons. You may have heard of the Shakers as well, and there's whatever Tom Cruise does. But all this shows that the U.S. is certainly not homogeneous when it comes to religion. Being an expansive country, there's always a lot of dynamic trends going on with religion and a lot of different traditions that all come together into the melting pot.
So when it comes to religion in America, there's really two driving forces that push people into religion. And that's if you're going to look at a broad sociological reason why people join churches. The first part is often because of instability, whether it's economic instability or just having the need to join a church and have a little bit of extra welfare. You know, churches do offer kind of a community as well. And that's probably the second reason why people join a church. So instability, maybe they're trying to get some help from the church. The church in the United States is definitely a place that offers aid and services to those in the community, and of course, community itself. Now, in Denmark, it's not quite the same, and you don't have those reasons and pushes to join a church. The first part is obviously that there's a much better welfare system in the compared to the United States. So in Denmark, there's a better social safety net, you have less income inequality, and there will be less reasons for somebody to seek out aid from a place like a church. There's also less of a community aspect. In America, people join churches often because it gives them a link to a community that they are either coming from if they're immigrants and looking to join, say, a Polish language church or a Ukrainian language church. They're joining a church to be around people that they can form a community with. And with a long history of immigration in the U.S., it's a bit different than Denmark, where immigration is not necessarily on the same scale and a bit more of a recent trend.
But even with that, one of the key differences in the U.S. is that obviously there's no state-sponsored religion. So that means that all churches have to self-fund. This is part of the reason why churches tend to be maybe a little bit proselytizing to those on the outside, but it's because they have to grow the flock. Obviously, churches are able to get tax deductions to be able to fund donations that come in towards them, but this is one of the reasons why they have to go out and recruit members. Always want to kind of keep the church growing to make sure that they can keep funding themselves for the normal operations that any church needs to have. In Denmark, at least within the Church of Denmark, it's state-funded. So that means that upkeep of churches and staff for the different religious officials that are in there is all taken care of with state sponsorship on there as well. Not something you're going to find in the U.S.
Yeah, and also the fact that there is a state religion means that there's a bit more regulation of the church itself in Denmark. In fact, having a government official that is part of overseeing the church is a bit of something that would never really happen in the U.S., but also kind of limits the extent to which the church can operate. Okay, now let's look at some trends of religion in the United States. So since about the late 1990s, trends of people being members of churches, synagogues, or mosques has declined precipitously. And that may surprise a lot of people, especially Danes, that tend to think that Americans are very religious people. Membership in churches since 2020 is actually only at 47%, the first time it's been measured under 50% since these types of surveys have been taken. And the fastest growing respondents to this survey are actually the group of people that are unaffiliated. That actually includes people who don't really belong to a church, don't really have any kind of religion, or people that are agnostic or atheists. So that is the largest group and the most fastly growing group of religious people in the United States. But it may not seem that way because so many people that are members of a church are so vocal about it. And like you mentioned, they tend to do this because they need to market themselves or their church and try to get more people to fill the seats. That way they can make donations to the church, fund the church, and they need to be bringing in more members and recruiting people almost like a business. And that's why they do things like have Christian rock services with free coffee and donuts, or even churches and movie theaters and things like that. So they're doing these little gimmicky things to try to get people into the church and basically grow the size of the church and the money that's coming in the door because it's not sponsored by any state.
So while Denmark has a Christian past, at least going back to the days of Harald Bluetooth, things are obviously a little bit different these days. In fact, only about 20% of Danes, when surveyed, say that they are at least somewhat religious. So when you look at that number against the 74% that we talked about at the beginning, that 74% is the number of Danes who actually opt in and pay the church tax. Paying the church tax, as surveys have found, and we've heard from people as well, it's basically a way to kind of opt into that part of Danish tradition. So if you want to get married in a church, if you want to get your kids baptized or confirmed, or you want to have your funeral in a church, you have to pay the church tax because it's kind of like an admission fee to be able to do these things as well. Though we also hear from people saying that they like paying the church tax because it helps keep up a key part of Denmark's history and helps fund these things so that they can keep churches intact and maintain, again, that part of Danish history. So again, compared to how it is in the US, since the Church of Denmark is state-funded, it means they don't really have to go out and recruit other members. Though, as long as you want your kids to be baptized and confirmed in there, you're going to be paying the church tax to go do that. So it does seem like a little bit of a recruiting tool there as well. Also have to acknowledge that it doesn't mean that everyone in Denmark that is religious or has some ties to religion is Christian. There are some people that adhere to the old Norse beliefs. There's a number of world religions that show up here, and especially given to all the waves of immigration since World War II in particular, surveys showed that roughly 4% of Danes are adherents of Islam. This is something that needs to be acknowledged, obviously, as we've now built one of the largest mosques in Denmark here in Copenhagen. There's mosques all over the country. And also, this is an area where we have to say there is a bit of political tension that's going on, as the country is trying to find a way to be able to adapt to new immigrants that come with certain beliefs and things they believe in here, and have them hold up with the Christian-only tradition of Denmark going again back to the 1000 AD.
Yeah, and politically, that's not unique to Denmark. We see that in the U.S. and all across Europe and the world, in fact. So that said, I think it is a bit surprising because when you look on paper, it really does seem like America is this secular country without any kind of state religion, and Denmark is, well, the opposite of that. But when you look at it under the surface, when you really dig into the society, it's a bit different. Now, what we hear from a lot of our Danish friends, though, is, well, then why do your coins say, "In God we trust"? And why do people that win a sports event say, "I just need to thank God"? And, I think it's really one of two things. One, that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody is super religious. The fact that it's on the coins and things like that was actually something that came about in the 1950s because America at the time was locked in the Cold War and trying to draw a distinction between the godless communists and the values of the United States. And I think it's very similar to the way that Danes put religion as part of national identity and part of a tradition or a value statement. And when American politicians or even, say, an actor or actress accepting an Academy Award thank God in their speech, it's more that they're just saying, they're acknowledging that there's something bigger than them that led them to the success that they have. It's a way of being a little humble and also declaring their values, because you don't necessarily, well, I can think of one guy that maybe would come out and just say, "I'm the best person that should be president," president and you all are terrible. But in a way, it's basically saying that there is something above me, and that's led me to this point. And I do think that a lot of people can relate to that, whether you believe in Odin or you believe in a different religious figure or god. So I don't know that things are really as crazy different in the United States as a lot of Danish friends will kind of have an impression of in America. But if you do want to see a video about things that might horrify Danes about living in America, you can click right here and watch that now. And if you want to see the inverse video, things that might horrify Americans about life in Denmark, you can click here and watch that. Thanks for watching, guys.
Hi.